Hey guys, Marcinkin here, bringing another Dragon Ball Z Dokkan battle video, and so today we are going to be going through the EZA top 10 on global for TURs only, ending out the year by doing some more of these tier lists. I did the top 10 LRs one yesterday. We are going to go back and do the top 10 EZAs. Now, I did one of these after the Heroes EZAs had come out. The only new addition to the field has, of course, been the release of the AGL 13. But what I like to do when I make these tier lists is I look at some of the feedback that you guys give in the comments. It's always fun having discussions with people about where they would make minor changes and stuff like that. And then what I like to do is go back and kind of play around with those units a little bit, you know, a bit more afterwards. And maybe revisit how I kind of rated them, because it's not like before I make a tier list I suddenly spend like a couple of hours reusing all of these units, right? As I say at the beginning of all of my tier lists, this is my opinion, it goes based off of my experience using units in the game, but you know, sometimes it just so happens that like one unit that might be on this list, I might not actually have used them for a little while. So maybe when I retry them out now, maybe with some different team builds, maybe alongside other characters that weren't out when I last used them or something like that, my opinions can change. So I do like to go back after I make one of those tier lists and retest out some of the units based on some feedback that you guys have given. And you know, it's interesting to think about it afterwards and reflect on some of the reasons why I put people in the places that I did. So even though only one new EZA has been added to the list, which is the AGL Android 13, so spoiler, I mean, he's in the top 10, right? But I have moved some of the units around quite a few places. In fact, I think I should probably, if I can actually get up the image, well, you won't see it on the screen, but I can get up the image here, actually, so I can see from the previous video where they were on the list beforehand. And bear in mind that this is, as I say, this was after the Heroes EZAs came out. So as I always say on my tier lists, you know, I've already mentioned these are my opinions. They're based on my experience using the units in the game. If you guys have a different opinion, you think they should be in a different order, let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section in a civil fashion. I love discussing these things. You know, we can have differences of opinion and still get along. Most of you guys, like 99% of the time, are all cool and chill, but occasionally you get one or two people getting a bit unhinged in the comments, which, whilst amusing, is also a little bit irritating, because, you know, we as a community, we're better than that, right? You guys are chill most of the time. This doesn't apply to most of you guys, but still someone manages to get in there with something a little bit weird. But, you know, who knows? Who will it be this time? Hopefully no one, but we'll see. So we're going to jump straight in at number 10. Which is the Darkness Toa, or sorry, I should say Demon Goddess Toa, because Darkness Toa is the AGL one. Now, I had her at number 9 last time, so probably understandable that with an addition to the list, she's been pushed down into the number 10 slot. I did see a lot of people saying that her dodge has been inconsistent for them when they use her, and to be honest, that is why she's lower on the list than she maybe could be, because once she gets her 3 dodges and her passive is fully built up, she can actually have some really good stats, like good start of turn defense. Her attack stat can actually be pretty decent, and she's providing a lot of support to the team, having that built-in dodge for the extra bit of defensive tech. And then, of course, she has that ultimate ability with the HP recovery and then the massive Giga boost for extreme allies for that turn, which can be absolutely ridiculous depending on the rotation that you have, making the other units just go crazy, right, and do tons of damage. So I really like Toa. I think number 10 is a good spot for her. Obviously, I feel like any EZA that isn't on this list that you think could potentially be at number 10 instead of her, I could definitely see arguments for some of the EZAs that are missing from this list. So if you think another unit should be at number 10 instead of her, do let me know in the comments who you think it is and why. It'd be interesting to see who you think should have made the list, who did not make the list this time around. But Toa, at number 10, I think she is very good. As we get more, hopefully, more extreme buffs with some teams that she will be on, she could certainly be very useful, because whilst being a Heroes unit, obviously she is on things like Dragon Ball Seekers, Time Travelers, Terrifying Conquerors. These are categories that can always be getting extreme buffs that will benefit from her ability. But even without her ultimate ability, she supports all allies. So Peppy Gals, Siblings Bond, Heroes Battle of Wits crossover, like all these categories, right, she's going to be very good for. So then we move on to number 9, and at number 9 I've put Blue Kaioken Goku. So earlier I actually had him at number 7, but with some of the feedback and then kind of thinking about his placement in the meta, remember that this is a list based on global. So maybe I would consider moving him back up if the androids were out on global, the Int Tournament of Power androids, because they're obviously a very good support for him. They're another Reps of Universe 7 character, but honestly, as it stands in the current meta, he doesn't really have the team that he needs for his full potential. But the reason why he still kind of makes it onto the list is when I did the showcases for him when he got his EZA during the anniversary, just using him on a team with one Universe Survival Saga ally, so he can get his guard and the chance to do an additional super, he can still do some pretty good numbers. Like, he can build up to a pretty decent amount. He's not crazy defensively, but he can look okay, especially when he does have that guard. You just miss out on the Spirit Bomb, which is obviously a big part of the unit. If it was a lot easier to get, like imagine if you replaced every single instance of Universe Survival Saga, all Reps of Universe 7, in his passive and his active skill condition, with something like Power Beyond Super Saiyan, he would be way higher on the list, right? Because it would be super easy to get all of those abilities with good link partners and all of that stuff. But for now, he sits at number 9. Maybe when we do the next list after the androids have come out, well, the next list will probably be, the next celebration is going to be Trunks, which will come with some EZA'S. Well, I don't know if any of those make the top 10 based on the feedback that I've heard on those units from the JP players, but we will see. For now, he sits at number 9. So at number 8, this is another unit that's moved down actually a significant number of spaces, and that is the physical Piccolo. Now, actually, he's the one that's had the biggest drop-off, because the last list that I made, he was at number 4. But with taking a lot of time to think about it, I've used him a couple more times in the Orange Piccolo team against like Fusion Zamasu. And whilst the Scouter effect is super good, I think that's the reason why a lot of people have him very high in the list, because a Scouter ability can essentially be almost like a, not like an auto win, but it gives you that extra level of information that can be incredibly good. But the thing is, this guy, on turn 1 against Fusion Zamasu, who he has type advantage over, he's taken somewhere between like 70 and 80 to 90k from normal attacks or from the AoE, depending on who he's linked with and whether there's any support on the rotation. In fact, the rotation we did earlier, where he took like 78k or something, that was with linked up with Orange Piccolo and defensive support from Gamma 1. Now, obviously, he is a stacking unit, so he needs some time to get going, and when you have events where he can do that, he can obviously look very, very good. But yeah, I mean, I just think the current meta, he's not looking super great. Like, against physical Zamasu, he'll take some decent damage, especially if he's taking normals after Zamasu has supered. Zamasu's super, obviously, is going to kill him, because whilst he can build up to a good amount of raw defense, that's all he has, right? Now, he does have the Scouter, so ideally in those situations, you're just not putting him in front of the super attack. But you can get into rotations where, you know, say you've got him with Orange Piccolo, but Orange Piccolo's intro buff has run out and he doesn't have his guard. He will die to a super from Fusion Zamasu in like slot 1, for example. So on that rotation, if you're left with these two and a super is incoming, neither of them could really take it. So like knowing that the super is coming doesn't even necessarily super help you out on that turn. So I do still think he is very good. I feel like there's a possibility if we start getting more events where we do actually have slightly more time to build up, especially if the earlier phases are int, he could maybe see a jump back up the list. It's more so, I think, reconsidering the units who I'd put below him last time, who after a bit of sort of testing and everything, I think actually may be slightly better. So it's not so much the case that I think he's a lot worse than I did the last time. It's more so that I think some of the other units are actually better than I maybe gave them credit for last time. So moving on to number 7, we have MVP 17. Now he's moved up. He was at number 8 last time. He was below Blue Kaioken Goku, but with Blue Kaioken Goku pretty much needing him as the ally on a lot of these other teams to get that Universe Survival Saga ally that's actually meta relevant, I feel like this guy is super useful. Android's team has seen a lot of buffs recently, especially with the 13 EZA release, and this guy can do very, very well in some of the more difficult events. Like, turn 1 can be a liability because when you're on full health, he doesn't have that extra defense and damage reduction. But when he has that active, he's very, very good defensively. You know, he builds up defense from taking a couple of hits. He's giving everyone the defensive buff. He's got some decent links. Like, he just works really well on a lot of these teams. He's on superheroes, so like Gohan, Ultimate Gohan or Orange Piccolo's team. He makes an interesting choice for something like Fusion Zamasu. Androids, obviously, still very good as well. I just feel like, in terms of how valuable he is in the current meta, I just think he is more useful than any of the other units that we put below him on this list. So he is going to be at number 7. I think it is a pretty solid placement for him. I don't think anyone would argue that he should be much higher or, you know, not even on the list. So I think it's a pretty decent placement for him overall. Got some good buffs recently. I mean, the TOP androids coming out is technically a buff for him as well when they do come out. But, you know, this is based on now on global. And I think he is at number 7 fairly comfortably. So moving on to number 6, we now have the physical Beerus. So Beerus was at 5 last time, so he's dropped down 1 spot, and that is mainly just because we have a new addition. I do still really like Beerus. I think my main complaint with him, and I talked about this a little bit in the last tier list, is he gets all that damage reduction in slot 1, which is really good. He does need to get hit to get some extra boost as well. But then his big problem is, and you know, Tech Pan had the same issue and stuff, right, where you get your super attack off, and then you get supered by one of these big bosses, and then he just gets blown away, right? So I do think he can be very, very strong. He is also lacking really good, like, top tier partners, because Realm of Gods, a lot of that team is largely Saiyan based. We need to get like a new Dokkan Fest Whis or something like that, right, for him to be really good. I mean, he can still be very solid, of course, but also he is orb dependent on getting that extra damage reduction, which if you're not fighting a Realm of Gods ally to get the orb changing, that can sometimes be annoying as well. So like, if you're relying on him to being that defensive unit in slot 1 before he attacks, but then you get a bad orb field and you're not fighting Realm of Gods ally, so you can't create rainbow orbs to link them all up, then you can not get the 7 orbs, and then he's not even doing the thing that you kind of want him to do. So, I mean, just by that, putting it like that, I could almost see arguments why he could potentially be lower on the list. But when he's at his best, he is looking pretty crazy. So I think 6 is a pretty decent spot. Just outside of the top 5, I think, is a good spot for him. And it's the reason why him losing that defensive capability after he attacks is the main reason why I put him below the unit that we're going to have at number 5, which is the AGL Android 13 EZA. Now, I was blown away by this guy's performance after his EZA. Even in base, like, his attack stats are alright, his defense is decent, and then of course once you transform into the Fusion Android 13, then you're looking at him having like over 1 million defense at the start of turn. Now, he doesn't get any extra defense on super, so that defense is what he has for the whole turn, but a lot of that's like the bare minimum on a good rotation for him. If you get additional supers in the base form, which obviously stacks his defense permanently, and then he transforms, he can get almost up to like 1.5 million on some crazy turns. Now, he would be much better if he had built in additional just as standard, but he only has an additional as part of his passive if you're fighting a Goku enemy, which unfortunately at this point in the game, in the current meta for the end game, there aren't really any Goku enemy events that are relevant, which is unfortunate. We keep saying this is like the running theme for villain characters, right? They keep giving them these weird restrictions for super type enemies or Goku family enemies or something like that, but then we don't get events where we get those enemies. So I could see this guy maybe moving up the list if we got like a suddenly really new meta relevant difficult event where you fight a Goku, especially because once he transforms as well, he can do some good attack stats, especially versus a Goku, but he only gets crits if you're fighting a Super Saiyan enemy or a Goku, like from his passive. So I built mine mostly additional for the stacks in base, and then dodge, because other than the raw defense, he doesn't have any defensive tech. But that means if you're not fighting a Super Saiyan or a Goku, he won't be critting. So he's dropping like, you know, potentially 10 million attack stats, but not really doing that crazy damage if you're not getting crits, especially if you are fighting a tech enemy. So I do think he is really good. Like I say, multiple 10 million plus attack stats, a million defense raw at the start of the turn. So as long as he's not taking a super, he comfortably tanks every single normal attack in the game. Just unfortunately, the big boss super attacks will kill him. But I feel like there's so many units in the game. We talk about this all the time. That niche or that category, whatever you want to call it, where unit tanks everything in the game normals wise, but then the big bosses, Fusion Zamasu, Omega or Sin, like will kill him with a super attack. I don't think that's necessarily the worst thing in the world. And like I said, the reason why I put him above Beerus is probably better defensively, well, is better defensively if you get the 7 orbs and then before he attacks. But after Beerus attacks and then for like the rest of the turn, I think he's not as good, right? Like he does have some damage reduction, but he doesn't have as high defense. I guess it's arguable, right? Like it depends on the enemy and the team setup, I suppose. Because if we're saying Beerus has a Realm of Gods enemy, which is more likely because that's what the all 3 of the final Dismal Future Red Zone stages are, then he's getting that damage reduction. Whereas obviously with a Super Saiyan or a Goku enemy, 13 is potentially getting extra defense early on in the event. Then he's doing more damage once he transforms. So, I mean, if you wanted to switch Beerus, if your only problem with the list was that you would switch Beerus and Android 13, I probably wouldn't have much of a huge disagreement with that. And, like, maybe it is a little bit of recency bias, but with how limited I think Beerus is and with how very buffed the Android team has been recently, I think Android 13 slightly pips it out for me for being in that number 5 slot. So, when we get to the top 4... there hasn't been a crazy amount of change. There's been a minor shift. Well, I mean, obviously, Physical Piccolo was number 4 last time, but there has been a minor shift here. So at number 4, we have Super Saiyan 4 Vegito. So last time I put him at number 6, I put Beerus above him and Piccolo above him, but I feel like he should be higher on the list. Like, he is insanely good. I think one of the things, even though it is RNG related, so your experiences with him could obviously be worse if you've been more unlucky. But like, again, if we compare him to Beerus, for example, with his best link partner, which is Limit Breaker Super Saiyan 4 Vegito, he's doing higher attack stats than Beerus. His base defense, I think, is around the same post super. It might be, one of them might be slightly higher than the other. Now, while he doesn't have the damage reduction, he has the 50% chance to counter a super. So Beerus in slot 1 with that extra damage reduction, there's a lot of these big boss super attacks that he would actually survive, but then after supering, he won't. Whereas this Vegito, he probably doesn't survive their supers pre or post super attack, but he has a 50% chance to take 0 damage from them completely, which is obviously a very, very powerful ability. And then obviously, like, he massively juices up Limit Breaker Vegito, who is potentially the best TUR in the game. I don't like to necessarily consider their effect on other units for when I do these tier lists, because, you know, I could easily put him at number 1 just based on the fact that he makes Limit Breaker Vegito so much better. But I think number 4 is a good spot for him. I think he deserves to be in the top 5. Again, if you wanted to switch him around with the unit directly below, or even with like Beerus maybe still, like I had him Beerus above him last time, I wouldn't necessarily disagree. I mean, that's what I thought when I made the list the last time, right? But I think he deserves to be top 5. I think he is closer to some of the units above him than he is to some of the units that I'd put above him last time. So I think 4 is a good spot for him. And then the top 3, there has been one minor change. So at 3, we still have Future Gohan. Future Gohan is incredibly good. Bond of Master and Disciple is a category that has a lot of units on it, so him giving them a huge amount of support, 50%, is really, really good. Now, if you don't have a Trunks on the team, he won't be as good, right? Because he doesn't get the chance to guard, which he does need a Trunks actually on the rotation. And then he can't transform without a Trunks. But we're going to be considering him here with a Trunks, which is going to be most of his team builds. He has the chance to guard. He has damage reduction if you're at 58% or less HP. Or sorry, 58% damage reduction when you're at 70% or less HP. But that can activate mid-turn. So that is really, really good. Now, you can, unfortunately, get into the situations where you don't lose enough HP, and then, like, the first attack of the turn he takes is a super, and then he takes a lot of damage, and that is not good, especially without the Trunks, right, if he doesn't guard. But he is able to tank a lot of these attacks, and when he has his damage reduction, he's super good defensively. He's providing all the support, And then once you do transform into the Super Saiyan Future Gohan, you have the damage reduction guaranteed. He's able to do very, very good attack stats while being incredibly strong defensively. And if you have a Trunks on the same turn with him, he can do built-in additionals. He gets an additional if there's an Android or Future Saga enemy. So again, with the current meta and the Dismal Future Red Zone, he can just go absolutely crazy in those stages. So Future Gohan is still very, very good. He also has a ton of HP. As like a fully rainbowed EZA unit, so very, very good for providing to the overall team's pool of HP, and he's a very strong unit on the Super Saiyans team, which obviously we just got the 200% Carnival leader with the LR Super Saiyan trio. So if you have this guy on the team, you have like Sword of Hope Trunks, he can be very, very strong on that team. And then we get to number 2, and this is where the major change came in based on some feedback from last time. I'm going to put AGL Zamasu at number 2, because in the Dismal Future Red Zone, like turn 1, he can definitely be a little bit of a liability. Once he gets going, I think he can still be really, really good, especially once, you know, you get to the next turn. He has a little bit of damage reduction in base. He heals you at the end of the turn, which is really nice. And then when you get to the next turn, he transforms into the AGL Fusion Zamasu actual fused version. And then this is where he is obviously very, very good, right? 50% damage reduction, gives allies 2 ki. Gets pretty good raw defense after attacking. If he gets hit in slot 1, you get the extra attack as well. He is raising attack and defense on super. Recovers HP at the start of the turn if you're at 90% or less. And then recovers 10% HP at the end of the turn for each time he receives like 5 attacks. Which I think is very, very good. You largely keep him in this form, I would say, right up until the end. And then you use this as the finisher, where he's able to do really, really high attack stat. With a chance to additional as well. He's just really, really good, right? Like, very, very strong, very good. The only reason I think he's not the guaranteed number 1 is that his turn 1 in his like base form is not super great. And unfortunately, as villains constantly get neglected, the Zamasu team is not as crazy as we would like it to be. You know, on release, when the worldwide units came out, Zamasu's team was incredibly powerful and super fun to use, and it still is. It's just the fact that he gets over, like, super units, I guess, will just always do this, but super units and super teams always kind of overtake those setups. But even so, the combo of Fusion Zamasu, the LR, and then this guy is really, really good. And there's other teams you can run them on, even teams with like super class leaders, like the Future Saga and stuff like that. So this guy, very, very good. I still think he deserves to be very high up in the list, but after thinking about it, and seeing a bunch of people say the same thing in the comments for last time, I'm doing it. I'm putting Dark Mask King at number 1. Dark Mask King is insanely good. He needs a Hero's Ally on rotation to get his guard, and then of course that makes him significantly better. He gets the extra 100% defense as well. But with Heroes essentially being one of the better teams in the game at the moment, and then, you know, we even did like a theme team battle on stream the other day where we did a Vegeta family team that was all time travelers. So we used the Carnival LR Trunks leader. And then you've got units like Great Saiyan Man 3 that is actually obviously technically Trunks. The Xeno Super Saiyan Vegeta is going to be getting an EZA with the next Heroes team. Like, there's going to be buffs that Heroes units will be getting that will be on these other categories with him, that even outside of just a pure Heroes team, you can get those buffs, right? Like, I've done videos with using the LR Fusion Zamasu team, but where we're using Rose, and then like this guy, Fu. Like, there's just a lot of setups. He doesn't have to be a full Heroes team for this guy. And in fact, we even tried him out on a test run against Fusion Zamasu without a Heroes ally. Now, without the guard, he takes a lot of damage from the first hit of the turn. But then post-super, he was still actually able to tank reasonably well. And of course, every time he super attacks, he's healing you based on the damage that he does. So you get one of those turns where he gets a crit, or he gets like an additional super. As I said in the previous one, like, I've had runs with the Heroes team or with like the Zamasu team with Rose and all that kind of stuff, where against Fusion Zamasu, even the physical Fusion Zamasu, this guy takes a super attack in slot 1, survives, then super attacks, gets a crit, and then you're basically back on full health, which is like, no other unit in the game does that, pretty much. Or at least no other EZA TUR that we could be considered for this list. Like, any of these other units, that even the ones that are below him, even if they can eat a super from Fusion Zamasu and potentially survive, they're not then healing you almost back up to full health with their attack, which then pretty much guarantees you survive the rest of the turn, and then that leaves you alive for like a support memory to go off, or to use an item if you are using them, or if you're doing like a challenge run, maybe your next rotation has a unit that's going to have like an active skill or something like that. Like, his healing is really, really good. It was the one thing that I really thought with his EZA they would just leave kind of lacking, so that he wouldn't do that much damage, so the heal wouldn't be too OP. But they gave him the ability to build up attack as he's receiving attacks, so he can get up to like 6, 7, even 8 million attack stats on certain rotations, which for a unit that's healing you based on the damage they do and also being very strong defensively is really, really good. And of course, he is technically a pure Saiyan as well, so as more units come out in the future, as more heroes units come out and things like that, there's going to be other teams that he's going to be very strong on as well. So I'm very much looking forward to how well he ages, and when an EZA will come out that I think is, you know, straight up just considerably better than him. So it'll be interesting to see when and who that unit will be. So there you go. That is the top 10 list for EZA TURs on Global. There's the zoomed out list starting from 10, reverse order. We have Int, Demon Goddess Toa, STR Blue Kaioken Goku, Physical Piccolo, Physical MVP 17, Physical Beerus, AGL Android 13, Physical Super Saiyan 4 Vegito, Int Future Gohan, AGL Zamasu, and Int Dark Masked King. Those are the top 10 EZA TURs on Global as of right now, according to me. My opinion, as I say, let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. How would you change this list if you would? Let me know your thoughts, and I look forward to discussing it with you guys in the comment section. So be chill, be cool. This is going to be one of my last videos that goes up before Christmas, so I hope you guys have a great time over the holidays. I've got videos scheduled to go up over the next couple of days, but in terms of streams and stuff like that, I won't be back until I think the 27th. So I hope you guys enjoy your holiday period. Let me know all your thoughts on the tier list. And yeah, that's going to be it for the video. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Check out the links down below for the Discord and the merch store, and I will see you all again soon. Have a good one.